Welcome, friends of the Greasy Shop Rag. Today we're going to take a look at Husqvarna 450 chainsaw. Customer complaint is that it's kind of boggy and it's just not running right. So what we want to do is look in the fuel tank, because if there's a fuel related issue, it usually could start from the tank. This filter doesn't look too bad. Looking in the bottom of the tank, I don't see poor quality fuel, at least visually. I don't see water in the fuel. I don't see a ton of dirt and debris in the bottom. I want to pressure test this fuel line. If there was a hole in the hose, that could certainly contribute to a boggy condition. I'm trying to put 10 pounds of pressure on here, but it won't hold. So I must have a hole in the hose, right? Well, I'm kind of thinking maybe it's my connection right here. We're going to kind of reseat this and try it again. And sure enough, it looks like I'm able to hold 10 pounds. So I guess it just goes to show you sometimes you got to double check your work, right? Kind of flexing things around here and moving the line around just to make sure there isn't some kind of pinhole that is only revealed at a certain angle or pressure on the hose or something like that. It all looked good. I'm happy with the hose. Happy with the fuel that's in there. What are we going to do now? We're going to button it up. I'd like to run it on his fuel. But first thing I want to do is just make a couple of these checks. We're going to look in the cylinder and make sure that it's not scored. First impressions under the hood, the air filter looks either new or very clean. Decompression button seems to be working. The spark arrestor screen doesn't appear to be plugged up, but there's an awful lot of staining on that muffler, like maybe it was flooding and fuel was coming through the exhaust and it stained that muffler. Spark plug looks brand new. So it appears there was an attempt made to fix his problem with a little bit of maintenance. It has spark. Now that doesn't mean that the spark is timed or it's a strong spark or any of that. It just means that we don't not have spark. All right. Let's purge the system and see if this will run. That started right up, didn't it? Closing the choke while it was starting to die out will richen up the mixture, and that caused the engine to kind of recover. So that basically narrows it down to the fuel system. We're going to dump this fuel out. It doesn't look that bad. It doesn't look that bad at all. I didn't see any water in there. Looking down in the tank, I didn't see any puddle of water down in there. So this video is going to kind of address the time issue of how long does it take to diagnose a carb problem and put a kit in a carburetor. We are 4.5 minutes into this video and the diagnosing is done, and we're going to start the carb removal in an attempt to fix his bogging problem. There's 2 saddles that hold the air filter base in place. We've already removed the 4 screws. We loosen the base from the saddles The only thing holding it in place now are the wires on the stop switch and the hoses on the purge bulb. The stop switch wires don't have to be removed, but somehow we got to get some slack in the system here in order to move this out of the way. And that usually means popping some hoses off the purge bulb. So our secondary throttle assembly is kind of stuck to the intake boot here. Take a good look at the linkage before you remove it so you can put it back the way it came apart. Our throttle cable, if we hold the throttle open a little bit, we can pop the ferrule of the cable out of the cam on the side of the carb. Our fuel hose is pushed on this side. Got that off of there, kinda. Yeah. There's some clips on the bottom of the carburetor that hold it into place, and we'll have to pop those out. One of them's located right there. Maybe that was the only one on this unit. And right there is the fitting. That would be the impulse hole that goes into the intake boot. So when you put the carb back on, you'll want to make sure that you're getting that fitting into that hole on the boot. All right, we're just going to clean the carburetor up a little bit before we open it. And the first side we're going to work on is the fuel pump side. One screw holds the fuel pump cover in place. And then we have the pump membrane, and here we have the micro screen. On this side we have the metering chamber, and there's 4 screws holding the metering chamber plate in place. We're gonna, right there, I'm kind of trying to magnetize my bit on the screwdriver to lift these screws out. That seemed to have worked. We'll pop the cover off of here. It's stuck down pretty good. And there's our metering diaphragm. I'm going to use a razor blade to peel it off of here. It looks really stiff. Yeah, that was really stiff. So we're going to have to get a kit for this carburetor. We've got a Zama carb. And you look right down in here and it says C1M. And you look over here and it says EL37B. So we'll use them numbers to look up which kit we need. And you'll see we're 8.5 minutes into the video. I guess I'd say we're at the halfway point. So here's our kit, an RB145. It's the official Zama carb kit. So that metering diaphragm, it looked like it would hold 2 different positions, when I pushed on it and it was clicking. If it was held open, it would never push down on the metering diaphragm and let fuel in there. If it was pushed down, it would always be holding the metering lever open and the needle open, and you'd be getting a flooding condition. And that flooding condition could explain why we saw that staining on the exhaust. But it was probably held open when we pressurized that fuel line. So we have removed the metering lever and the needle. And now we're going to put the new needle in place. There's the needle, and I'm just kind of wiping the rubber tip because it's got some kind of protective coating on it. Could use a rag or I could use carb cleaner, but Seems like I could just wipe it with my finger and it cleans it up. So I'll load the needle into the metering lever. The spring is on top of the carb already. And we'll just drop this in place. I didn't mean that we were going to drop the needle, but that's what happened. I meant drop the whole assembly down into place where it lives. Once I got it down in there and I slide the cross shaft over underneath the screw, I can tighten the screw down. Butterfingers. And we got it. All right, that looks pretty good. I want to check the metering lever height. And the end of that metering lever should be level with the sides of the carburetor. That's why I was using the razor blade to check that. And it looked good. So now we're going to stack a gasket and our new metering diaphragm on top of here. And then our metering chamber cover. Four screws hold it in place. Look at them go. All right, final torque on the screws. You know, just don't get crazy. They're little fine thread screws. But you don't want them loose either. So the metering chamber side is done. Now we're going to pop out the micro screen. And you know, it looked all right, but the kit comes with a new screen, so we're going to put a new screen in it. Turns out that my screwdriver bit is about the right size for pressing that screen down into place. Here's our new fuel pump membrane and gasket. And hopefully this gasket will come off the cover clean, and it did. Very nice. Open the throttle up a little bit so that the idle stop screw isn't hitting the lever. And then put our screw in. So we're almost 13 minutes into this, and our carburetor's done. We have to put it back in the saw now. So that would raise the question, you know, how much should a dealership charge for this kind of a job? I think, you know, there's only like 2 cuts in this video. And we only saw one of those cuts so far. And that's once I went to get the carb kit. So it's pretty much real time. If you watch my videos, you know I do carb work all the time, right? So this is second nature, and I can move pretty fast. Do I use that experience to save the customer money, or do we have a set rate for this type of job, and the fact that I can do it a little faster just means I can get more work done in a day? And that's kind of the route we go. This job has a half an hour labor rate, and I don't always win. I mean, if something comes in that I'm not familiar with, we may end up with 40 minutes into this job or whatever it might be, but they're still going to get that half an hour labor rate. All right, we are installing the secondary throttle assembly. I looked at the linkage before I took it apart, so I know how it goes together. You should do the same. We got our carb in place already. We got the fuel lines on it. We've got the impulse fitting, into the intake boot. We've got the throttle cable in place and the fuel line on there. Now we're going to try something a little different than I normally do for installing the purge bulb. I usually just push the lines on the back once I've squeezed it into place here. But I'm going to try putting the air filter base on first and then installing that purge bulb. I'll see how that goes. And this is one of them situations where doing it a little bit different might add a few more minutes to the job. I don't know yet. So we're getting our 4 screws installed. We're going to buzz them in with the screw gun. Just, if you got a clutch on a screw gun, set it at a low value so that we don't strip anything in the plastic. Alright, that was the second break of the video. We're at the 16-minute mark. Pretty much all I got to do is get this primer bulb on there. Now there's a long stem and a short stem on the bulb. The long stem is always going to be the one that goes return to tank. And the short stem will be the one that comes from the carburetor. And you can see I'm struggling with this a little bit. I probably should have just assembled it the way I normally assemble it. But I was watching somebody on YouTube do it this way, and I thought, well, I'm going to try it like that. I think I like my way better. Just double checking to make sure the lines are on the purge bulb. Yeah, I guess that looks good. Alright, here's this new air filter. Doing a function check on the trigger and the choke. And what are we going to do? We're going to put fresh fuel in it. I didn't think his looked that bad, but we'll put fresh in it. Then I'm going to try and start this thing up. And if it starts, then that's all I'm going to have for you on the Husqvarna 450 chainsaw that had a stiff metering diaphragm. Thanks for watching. Later.